Hop in the wagon, Queen Family Truckster, as we revisit the hilarious cast of National Lampoon's Vacation from 1983 and discover what they're up to in 2025. Clark Griswold, brought to life by Chevy Chase, was the enthusiastic dad whose dream vacation turned into a comedy of errors. At 39 in 1983, Chase's background from Saturday Night Live infused the role with perfect physical comedy and deadpan humor, capturing the chaos of family road trips. Interesting fact, Chase ad-libbed many of Clark's iconic lines, including the infamous rant at Wally World. In 2025, at 81, Chevy Chase remains active in Hollywood despite health challenges in recent years. He's starring in the upcoming thriller Catnip with Bruce Dern and is the subject of a CNN documentary, I'm Chevy Chase and You're Not, set for 2026. He attended SNL's 50th anniversary celebration and visited fan sites tied to his classic films, keeping his comedic spirit alive for new generations. Ellen Griswold, portrayed by Beverly DAngelo, was the heart of the Griswold family, balancing Clark's chaos with warmth and wit. At 31 in 1983, DAngelo's roles in Hair and Coal Miner's Daughter showcased her versatility before she nailed this comedic role. Interesting fact, her singing in Coal Miner's Daughter earned her a Golden Globe nomination, highlighting her musical talent. In 2025, at 73, Beverly DAngelo remains active, starring in No Address and attending the last Showgirl Golden Globe event. She's also pursuing her passion for singing, performing in a Patsy Cline tribute, and working on a documentary about her music journey, driving across America to perform in small venues. Aunt Edna, played by Imagigene Koka, was the cranky, unforgettable relative who added chaos to the Griswolds' road trip. At 74 in 1983, Koka's comedic genius, honed on your show of shows with Sid Caesar, brought sharp humor and expressive physicality to Edna's biting lines. Interesting fact, Koka's rubbery face, compared to Charlie Chaplin's, made her a standout in comedy, earning her a 1951 Emmy. Imagigene Koka passed away in 2001 at 92 from natural causes related to Alzheimer's disease. Her legacy as a comedy pioneer endures, with her work inspiring female comedians and her performances still celebrated in classic TV archives and retrospectives. Cousin Eddie, portrayed by Randy Quaid, was the lovable, clueless relative whose bizarre antics stole scenes in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 32 in 1983, Quaid's comedic flair, fresh from roles in The Last Detail and Midnight Express, made Eddie a fan favorite. Interesting fact, Quaid's ad-libbed line, I'm so hungry I could eat a sandwich from a gas station, became one of the film's most quoted moments. In 2025, at 74, Randy Quaid has largely stepped back from acting, focusing on fan conventions and political activism. He starred in The Christmas Letter in 2024, his first film in 6 years, and remains vocal on social media, supporting controversial causes and living a quieter life in Vermont. Rusty Griswold, played by Anthony Michael Hall, was the sarcastic teenage son caught in his dad's chaotic vacation plans. At 15 in 1983, Hall's natural charm and comedic timing, fresh from his breakout role in 16 Candles, made Rusty relatable and hilarious. Interesting fact, Hall was cast after John Hughes saw him perform improv at a comedy club, a rare feat for a teen actor. In 2025, at 57, Anthony Michael Hall remains a steady presence in Hollywood. He stars in Trigger Warning and Air Force One Down, and he's producing a biopic about John Belushi. Hall also mentors young actors, sharing lessons from his Brat Pack days at industry workshops. Audrey Griswold, portrayed by Dana Barron, was the eye-rolling teenage daughter navigating the Griswold family's wild road trip. At 17 in 1983, Barron's debut in National Lampoon's Vacation showcased her knack for deadpan humor, complementing the film's chaotic comedy. Interesting fact, Barron was cast after beating out 200 actresses for the role, impressing director Harold Ramis with her natural sass and chemistry with Anthony Michael Hall. In 2025, at 59, Dana Barron remains active in acting and producing. She recently appeared in the TV movie The Christmas Letter alongside Randy Quaid and runs a production company, focusing on family-friendly films. Barron also mentors young actors and supports animal rescue charities. Roy Wally, played by Eddie Bracken, was the elusive amusement park mogul Clark Griswold desperately sought in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 68 in 1983, Bracken's comedic legacy from 1940s films like Hail the Conquering Hero brought a warm, quirky charm to the brief but memorable role. Interesting fact, Bracken's distinctive nasal voice and expressive face were so iconic that director Harold Ramis wrote the part specifically for him. Eddie Bracken passed away in 2002 at 87 from complications following surgery. His extensive career in film, theater, and TV, including roles in Home Alone 2, remains celebrated, with his work archived in classic comedy retrospectives. Camp Comfort Clerk, played by Brian Doyle Murray, was the sarcastic campground employee who added to the Griswolds' misadventures in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 37 in 1983, Doyle Murray's dry humor, honed as a Saturday Night Live writer and performer, made his brief role memorable. Interesting fact, he's the older brother of Bill Murray, and his improv skills from Second City shaped his comedic delivery in the film. In 2025, at 79, Brian Doyle Murray continues to work in film and voice acting. He recently voiced characters in SpongeBob SquarePants and appeared in The Middle. He also enjoys writing, contributing to comedy scripts and supporting Chicago's improv scene. Cousin Catherine, played by Miriam Flynn, was the kind-hearted wife of Cousin Eddie, bringing warmth to the chaotic Griswold family visit in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 32 in 1983, Flynn's comedic timing developed through her work with the Groundlings improv troupe. Interesting fact, Flynn's improv background led to her ad-libbing several lines, including Catherine's warm but awkward hospitality, which became a fan favorite. In 2025, at 74, Miriam Flynn remains active in acting and voice work. She voices characters in The Simpsons and recently appeared in Curb Your Enthusiasm. Motorcycle Cop, played by James Keech, was the stern officer who hilariously confronted Clark Griswold over a dog-related mishap in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 35 in 1983, Keech's commanding presence, paired with his comedic timing from roles in The Long Riders, made the scene iconic. Interesting fact, Keech improvised much of the dialogue with Chevy Chase, including the heated exchange about animal cruelty, adding a spontaneous edge to the moment. In 2025, at 77, James Keech is thriving as an actor, director, and producer. He recently produced The Sleeping Negro and is directing Steam Power, a documentary. Keech also supports Alzheimer's advocacy, inspired by his work on Glenn Campbell, I'll Be Me. Car Salesman, played by Eugene Levy, was the sleazy yet charming dealer who sold Clark Griswold the infamous wagon Queen family truckster in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 36 in 1983, Levy's sharp comedic instincts, honed in SCTV alongside comedy legends like John Candy. Interesting fact, Levy's improvised pitch about the car's durability was so spot-on that director Harold Ramis kept it in the final cut. In 2025, at 78, Eugene Levy remains a comedy icon. He stars in Only Murders in the Building and hosts The Reluctant Traveler on Apple TV. Levy also mentors young comedians and supports Canadian arts, continuing his legacy from Schitt's Creek. Grover, played by Frank McCrae, was the bumbling yet intimidating Wally World security guard in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 42 in 1983, McCrae's imposing presence, paired with his comedic flair from roles in 1941 with John Candy. Interesting fact, McCrae, a former NFL defensive tackle for the Chicago Bears, brought his 6'6" stature and athletic energy to the role. Frank McCrae passed away in 2021 at 80 from a heart attack. His memorable roles in License to Kill, 48 Hours, and Used Cars continue to be celebrated in comedy and action film retrospectives. Russ Lasky, played by John Candy, was the cheerful but hapless Wally World security guard who faced Clark Griswold's meltdown in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 32 in 1983, Candy's warmth and comedic genius honed on SCTV and in films like Stripes. Interesting fact, Candy improvised much of his dialogue, including the iconic "Sorry, folks, park's closed" line, which became one of the film's most quoted moments. John Candy passed away in 1994 at 43 from a heart attack. His beloved performances in Uncle Buck, Planes, Trains and Automobiles, and Home Alone remain comedy classics, celebrated in fan tributes and retrospectives. Girl in the Ferrari, played by Christy Brinkley, was the flirtatious blonde who caught Clark Griswold's eye during a memorable highway scene in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 29 in 1983, Brinkley's supermodel status, gracing over 500 magazine covers. Interesting fact, Brinkley's radiant smile and chemistry with Chevy Chase were so electric that her scene, filmed in one day, became one of the film's most talked about moments. In 2025, at 71, Christy Brinkley remains a vibrant figure in modeling and business. She recently launched her Bellissima Prosecco line and starred in a Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. Brinkley also advocates for skin cancer awareness, sharing her journey as a survivor. Cousin Vicky, played by Jane Krakowski, was the rebellious teenage daughter of Cousin Eddie, adding quirky humor to the Griswolds' visit in National Lampoon's Vacation. At 14 in 1983, Krakowski's natural comedic talent, fresh from her Broadway debut in Starlight Express, shone through in her first major film role. Interesting fact, Krakowski's line about her character's wild streak was partially improvised, showcasing her early knack for comedy that later defined her career. In 2025, at 56, Jane Krakowski remains a versatile star. She recently starred in Your Christmas or Mine Too and voices characters in Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt specials. Krakowski also performs in cabaret shows and supports arts education charities, staying true to her Broadway roots. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.